I actually am from the Northwest. I grew up in the greater Seattle area, actually out in what they call the San Juan Islands. Sometimes when I tell people I'm from the San Juan Islands, they go, do they speak English there? I go, no, I'm not talking about San Juan, Puerto Rico. I went to the University of Washington Law School to go into entertainment law. And at the time, I started my career working in the concert industry for the largest concert company in North America. It was called Concerts West. And I had to do tour management for bands like, okay, I'm going to have you guess the years. Chicago, Earth, Wind, and Fire. Am I getting close? Okay. The Eagles. Glenn Frey was a really close friend of mine who we lost a couple years ago. And I did the Spirits Having Flown tour for the Bee Gees, which was really the Saturday Night Fever tour. Right? And then I worked with this group in 1981. Oops, I gave you the year, shoot. That did this album called Tusk, Fleetwood Mac. And when I was dealing with Fleetwood Mac, I thought they were going to kill each other. And I was in my 20s. I had ulcers. I couldn't deal with them. We put guards outside their rooms. I mean, and that's when I went back and I was going to law school, and I went, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I met this guy from 1960s rock and roll that's from the Northwest, Paul Revere and the Raiders. How many people remember Paul Revere and the Raiders? You fell for it and just dated yourselves. And I called him Uncle Paul. He was 14 years older than me, and we lost him a couple years ago. And he says, Roger, you're never going to change the world working in the concert industry. I know these guys up in Canada, they're trying to build this destination resort. You're a good promoter, good organizer. Go help them. So I went up and helped develop Whistler Resort in British Columbia, which hosted the 2010 Winter Olympics, the year it didn't snow, of course. And from there, we worked over in Greece for the 2004 Olympics. And we just started working with public sector, primarily cities and towns. The first 10 years I worked in resorts from 81 to 91, and then we started working in towns. And since that time, we've worked in more than 2,000 communities in all 50 states. We do a lot of work across the pond in Western Europe. I just got done working on a project in Switzerland. Then we worked up a lot in Scandinavia. And of course, some of those, we did a lot of work in Scotland, and people in Scotland always say, give our best to North Carolina. Because a lot of the Scots people, this is where they migrated to, or immigrated to. And so anyway, that kind of brings you up to date. And I've never looked back at the concert industry, but a few years ago, as a matter of fact, grew up in the Northwest. I now live in Phoenix, where, yes, it is hot in the summer. And I tell people for 8 months of the year, we live in the valley of the sun. The other 4, we live on the surface. And I was in a restaurant in Scottsdale with a group of people, and I was talking to them, and this guy comes up wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, and he says, excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but I recognize your voice. He goes, I'm trying to place you. And I said, I'm sorry I talk so loud. And he goes, no, that's not the problem. I'm just trying to place you. Did you ever work in the music industry? And I said, yeah, I used to do tour management for Concerts West. He pulls off his sunglasses and his hat, and it was Lindsey Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac. And the first thing he said was, what happened to your hair? And I went, you guys! And his comment back was, we've never had any business being in a band together. And I said, thanks a lot, because it got me out of that industry. I thought my whole career was going to be music. So anyway, fast forward, working with towns and everything around. We did, in North Carolina, we've worked in Burlington and Salisbury and a lot of places, particularly in the western part of the state. We worked in Asheville for several years. When we started working in Asheville, the average age of a resident was 58. Today it's 36. So Asheville made that whole turn because it needed to revise this. In 1979, their downtown was about 50% vacant. I mean, it was pretty bad. And now it's considered one of the best cities in the United States. And in livability.com, it's always like in the top 5. So that's a little bit of experience. This is my first time in Edenton. I had been to Plymouth in 2014. I've spoken at the North Carolina Main Street program and the Governor's Conference on Tourism. And after that, they said, could you come over and help us in Plymouth? That was in 2014. And so I kind of figured it out, said, you know, it was kind of like, wow, the coastal communities in North Carolina are really challenged. And then I came here and I went, oh, yes. And so Plymouth, you know, they obviously have a lot of work to do, and I spent all day there yesterday. But it was fun coming here and just seeing, you know, a lot of stuff I'm going to tell you today, you're already working on. So this is going to validate where you're at more than anything. So with that, I'm going to talk about sowing the seeds of prosperity. And if you see any slides or anything, say, I want a picture of that, just hold up your phone, grab a shot of it. But I thought I'd cover several topics. And those would include, you know, demographics, governance, tourism, downtowns, the importance of all of these things. And so here we go. And one thing I say all the time is you can never go back to the way it used to be unless you're in Mount Airy. You know, but even in their case, pretty soon you're going to run into generations when you say Mayberry, they go, what's that? And we're already starting to get there with the millennial generation. But the way it used to be is no longer an option. And I'm going to talk a lot about what's happening in demographics, what I call shift happens. And it's happening now across America. And I'm going to get into a few of these. And the first one has to do with economic development. For the first time in U.S. history, jobs are going where the talent is, or where the talent wants to be. In the past, it was always about agriculture, fishing, it could be forestry, it could be mining, it could be transportation along a major rail line. Sound familiar? I mean, that's the way the industry worked. And now it doesn't work that way. My son worked for Amazon for a number of years, and when Amazon started looking for its second world headquarters, they were looking for quality of life, not transportation or any of those other things, quality of life. So jobs everywhere are now going wherever the talent is where we're going to come. So that means that community development for the first time in the country is leading both economic development and tourism development. So this is the age of placemaking. And one of the great things is you already have got a lock on this in your area. And so this is going to validate a lot of what you're working on. And so one thing that's really important, I tell people, I speak at municipal leagues all the time. And I tell them that the focus of every single elected official, from the president all to county commissioners to town and city councils and boards and school board officials, every single elected official's responsibility is to improve the quality of life for their citizens. Sometimes we're a little challenged with that, but that is really their focus. And so I always say every town's mission is, how do we become the most desirable place to live in the United States or in North Carolina or even in the county? And so that's really important, that this is all about quality of life. And I'm a person that came from tourism and then kind of gravitated to where we do more work in downtowns, because the two need to be joined at the hip. And here you are, which is great. So another shift that we're seeing is that we're in the age of economic gardening. The days of the good old boy network, economic development days, smokestack chasing are over. I mean, even across the way in Plymouth, they're going, well, we need one of those big factories here. I go, it's not going to happen. It's just, you need it. So a lot of communities that are smaller stuff are turned into more tourism-based economies, which showcase quality of life, and that will bring in small businesses. And so that is the future, is we're taking smaller businesses and helping them grow. And so with that as a start, here are the 10 ingredients to sowing the seeds of prosperity. And I always say every single city and town needs to have a destination team. And so in this case, I put Destination Edenton Team. It's not another not-for-profit. And what it is when I say the word destination, for investment, as a place to live, and as a place to visit. So that destination is not just tourism. So here's the steps to do that. First of all, cities and towns have to get out of the silo mentality because we are now in a global economy. As a matter of fact, there are 19,500 cities and towns. These are the economic development dudes battling it out. There's 19,500 cities, towns, and by the way, 18,500 of them have populations of less than 40,000. 17,500 have populations of less than 20,000. Yet in most cities, everybody does their own thing. I mean, the schools do their thing. The chamber does its thing. Tourism does its thing. Downtown does its thing. Auxiliary organizations, Kiwanis, Rotary. And everybody does their own thing. And then you could add your arts councils and historical societies and local foundations. And this is what most towns end up with is, I call this the Economic Development Express. Really clipping along, isn't it? And so I always say the people that need to lead the effort of the future of towns across America is tourism, downtowns, chambers of commerce, and economic development. These organizations represent the private sector. That's tax base. So they represent the private sector. They need to be at the table. They are the ones that will increase the tax base so that your local elected officials and staff have the financial resources to improve the quality of life, whether it's more parks, better streets, whatever it is. And then finally, you're far more powerful as one loud voice that says Edenton, than you are as a whole bunch of separate voices that all look different, feel different, or saying different things. Here, I haven't noticed that. I went to websites and everything, and you all do a really good job really promoting your history as kind of your foundation. And it's not just colonial history. I mean, you've had all these different changes, and you can see it in your architecture and everything. And I think it's a really cool mix. You can see every generation since this country started here in those changes. And so that is really important. Here's number 2 to this, creating this team, is engage your millennials. And this is one of the biggest shifts in American history. How many of you were born between 1981 and 1996? Raise your hands. Okay. Yeah. And how many of you raise your hands just because you want to be in that age group? Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, I get it. And so this is the largest generation in American history. They are bigger than the boomer generation. The oldest are basically 38, youngest ones are 23, and this is, some people say it's 1982, 83. I mean, there's no hard, fast lines. Then there's the Gen Xers, which are that one in between, and then you go to the boomers, then you go to the greatest generation. But the reason I want to talk about them is because this is the best educated generation in U.S. history. I feel bad for them because they're the first generation that is saddled with a mountain of college debt before they even start their life. But one thing that's great about this, they are also the most diverse generation this country has ever seen, and they embrace it. And that's good news. And then finally, this is what's really important, is they are the most civically minded generation. You know what? I grew up in the late 60s, early 70s when it was down with the establishment. Then all of a sudden the boomers became the establishment. But there are more mayors under the age of 35 today in the United States than ever before in U.S. history, right now. Engage your millennials. They want to be engaged, but they need to be invited to the table. You should have a young professionals group. I don't know, does the town have a young professionals group? No? Okay, no. I think it's really critical. Because when you engage and give them a seat at the table, they will help lead you into the future so that you get out of this is the way it's always been and lead you in the future. And I'm going to give you one little story. This is the town of Irwin, Tennessee, population 6,000, so not much bigger than you. And this town was really strong. This is it now. I didn't have pictures before. But to give you a little background, in 1916, so 204 years ago, or 104 years ago, excuse me, I have no problem counting, they had a circus go down this main street. And it was led, they had elephants, and people rode on the elephants going down Main Street. And there's this one elephant, they were having a parade, and so somebody was just carving up watermelon along the sidewalk. Elephants love watermelon. And so this circus elephant would try to gravitate over towards the crowd to where that watermelon was, and they had a trainer, kind of a new trainer on the back, would whip this elephant to get her to go back in line and go down the street. And then she went down, she tried to gravitate more towards that, but just kind of gently heading towards there. And then he had these spurs on, dug his spurs into her. And so this elephant grabbed him off her back, threw him on the ground, stepped on his head and killed him. But that's not the history. Because within months, they brought in a big crane and they hung Mary the circus elephant in the middle of their downtown. Horrific. It was 1916. So if we fast forward 100 years, they lost a major employer. The town had about 30 or 40% vacancies downtown. They didn't know what to do. Their highest paying jobs were gone. They lost it. So here's 100 years later. And the mayor did two things. He said, why aren't you living here? So here's what he did. He went to high school. He went to the high school students, seniors in high school, before graduation. And there was probably, I can't remember what was in their class, 110 or 120, something like that. And he said, I want to know how many of you are going to leave here and don't plan on coming back. Because he expected them to go to college or whatever. And it was about 90% of them raised their hand. And he said, why won't you come back? And he said, because there's nothing to do here. And it wasn't about jobs. It was just that they were kind of embarrassed about their town. I mean, there just was really not much community pride. And so then he did another thing. Is later that summer, they're doing a 10-year reunion of Irwin High School. So he went to the reunion, welcomed them all back in town, and said, how many of you live in Irwin? And it was about 20%. So 80% of them did move away and they were coming back. He said, what would it take for you to move back? And they said, and basically their answer was, without using these words, quality of life. It wasn't jobs. It wasn't, that's what it was. And so he said, well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to create a millennial working group. He started with 5 or 6 in them. It is now 40. And he says, I will do, as a town, you bring ideas to us. And if we can afford it and if it's legal, we will do it. They were a dry town. So they became a wet town. They started doing more markets. They started doing all kinds of stuff. The very first thing they did was an elephant revival festival. As a matter of fact, they opened up the nation's only elephant sanctuary, and it is near Irwin. You know, Barnum and Bailey hung up the tent a couple years ago. Those elephants are in Irwin. So this is them 100 years later making amends. They had artists take these and they're all over downtown. I mean, this is them trying to shake a 100-year-old image of them to a new image. And then the town even let them do some pretty wild things, which you're probably not going to do in downtown Edenton. But you know what? It changed the image. And so they started doing the weekly farmers market, which, by the way, runs into the evening hours when people are off work and can come to them. And they started doing restaurants can now sell booze. There you go. They have upper level residential and workspace. You could take it either way. And then they did condos in former dilapidated buildings. I mean, 9 new businesses opened in 2 years. This is all in 2 years from him doing this. And then the president of the Millennium Group is now the communications director for the city. A microbrewery opened. A second one is about to open. Developers are coming. I mean, festivals are a big draw. And they've, all of a sudden, it totally changed everything because they turned over the reins. And there was a little bit, I don't know about that. You know, we're a historic downtown. We can't do that. So there was some of that tug of war. But what's really cool, and this is just in the last few years, when the mayor, a different mayor now, went to the high school seniors just this last year and asked them, how many of you after you're done college plan on coming back to Edenton? And it was like 50 to 60%. They changed the perception of the town that said, we want you to be here. We want to create those entrepreneurial opportunities. And by the way, if you cater to the millennials, you're going to get us boomers and you're going to get the Gen Xers. And I talk to colleges all the time and say, we like hanging out with you, whether you like it or not. It's really true. And so that is one thing that is really important. But all three generations, I'm talking about boomers, millennials, and Gen Xers, are really shaping American cities. What happened is the boomers started going to Europe when Ronald Reagan deregulated the airlines and made it affordable. Before that, people went on a plane, they dressed up in suits, ties, and skirts. And now it was all of a sudden affordable. So boomers started going over Europe and seeing all these piazzas and plazas and people out of their cars. Then the Gen Xers would go backpack around Europe, and stay in hostels. And the millennials will never stay in hostels. But then the millennials will go over there as exchange students. And all three generations are starting to see what has worked in Europe for centuries. Cities built around piazzas, people out of their cars, pedestrian-only streets, and it changed everything. So the third part of this is create that Destination Edenton team. This is just a group of volunteers that may be in, for your tourism, like Nancy, Economic Development, Arts Council, local foundation. And this is a group of people that meet like once a month to figure out what we have as common projects that you can work on to make Edenton even better than it is now in the county. And so we think doing a team like this, and I always say, keep it to 13 people or less. The bigger and I call it team, not committee. The bigger the committee, the less likely you are to ever get anything done, right? You have meetings for the sakes of meetings. This is all about what is there a project that we can work on together that's fantastic. Things like wayfinding, which, by the way, your wayfinding system is phenomenal. It probably wasn't easy politically to do. I'm so glad you did it. Because I took a couple pictures yesterday when I got back from Plymouth, and I thought, okay, I'm going to use this as a showcase. But some people would say, well, yeah, but that's not the way we are. And so maybe some people say, oh, we all have navigation systems. If you have a smartphone, you have a navigation system. We only use navigation systems to find things we already know exist. Your wayfinding showed me a whole list of things I didn't even know you had. That's the difference. So those are the kinds of projects. That one you've got, and there may be some other ones. I'm not too sure. But everywhere we've worked, Destination Rapid City, they do their downtown, they work with tourism, and that's what they actually called their downtown association. And if you look at it, it says, the mission of the Destination Rapid City is to create, sustain, maintain a vibrant city center which provide a cultural and recreational space for the enjoyment and use of community and its visitors. I mean, every one of those organizations I listed, that should be their goal too. And so that's how we do that. There it is. And then this is Destination Caldwell, Idaho, which was the dregs of the Boise area. People live in Boise, and 30 miles west is Caldwell. They go, we're not going there. But when you put together your destination team that they meet together once a month, and there's their brand mission, to position Caldwell as Idaho's premier gathering place. Focus on locally produced wines. They have the Sunny Slope Wine Trail, and they go there. But when you do this, all of a sudden you go from this that I showed you to that. Every town should have a destination team that meets once a month. And it should be stacked half with millennials. Give them a seat at the table. Let them have a voice. And then, of course, I always believe, and we created a thing called the Destination Development Association, which has like 80 how-to videos on everything. And we also believe that every organization is full of doers, not directors. You want people that'll do stuff, commit 2 or 3 hours, 4 hours a month, rather than show up at a meeting and then you never see them until the next meeting. Really important. And so there we've got this whole video library. I call it Netflix for communities. And it's got all kinds of stuff. And this would be your destination priority list, could come from this. This would be one of the things on that list. So once again, number one is putting together your destination team. Number two, I would say find your unique selling proposition. Now, I'm not so sure that you really need to do that. I think you're already really well known around, even in Charlotte and places. Everybody knows Edenton. They see you as this shining example on this side of the state. And so, but for other communities and other people you work with, this is really critical, is finding your unique selling proposition. Because we have the world at our fingertips in a fraction of a second. I mean, as a matter of fact, I just went in and said, okay, I want to find the smallest town in North Carolina. Within 30 seconds, here's what I learned. I learned it's probably Messick. I learned where it's at. I learned that the population is 218 people, and I could see all this. I found Wikipedia. I found its geography. I found its population, its racial mix. I mean, they've had some flooding issues. They're primarily African-American community with 60%. 63% of the population is male, so gals, there's lots of choices there. 62% commute alone for work outside the community. The median home price is $143,000, and the median average age is 57. I learned that in a minute. So here's the challenge, is that 92% of all Americans have broadband internet. And out of those 92% that have their internet, 95 use the internet to decide where we're going to live, where we're going to start a business, where we want to go visit this weekend or this summer. 95%, that is where it's at. And that is made for a major shift because people don't type in Edenton. They type in things like Chowan County, and if I say Chowan, it's because my wife found out in her ancestry that she has relatives way back, like 500-600 years, that were Chowan Indians. And so for years, she's saying, someday we're going to have to go over that part of North Carolina so I can see all the Native American history there with the Chowans. I was here about one day, I was here about 10 minutes, and somebody said, no. So, but once again, most people aren't, and by the way, have you ever gone anywhere and typed in the name of the county? People do not care about counties. Do you expect people in Virginia to even know what county you're in? I mean, no offense. I'm not talking about county government we don't care about. I'm talking about counties as destinations. And I'll ask audiences everywhere, have you ever gone anywhere because it was a county? And people aren't going to go in and type in, let's see, I'm thinking about opening a career or starting a career. I think I want to go to Chowan County, North Carolina. I mean, I wonder if people even in Charlotte know where your county is. I know they know where Edenton is. See what I mean? And so that's kind of a challenge. But what we do is, this is how we use the internet. We'll type in top art towns in North Carolina. We will type in the 15 best small towns. And by the way, there you are. You're on that list. Yes. And then we will type in things like job opportunities, Albemarle Sound area. We will type in things like, what do I have there? New homes in Edenton, North Carolina. But you notice something here. Best boating destinations in North Carolina. I mean, I could keep going. Top fishing spots in North Carolina or Eastern North Carolina, whatever you want to put. But here's the point. The city wasn't number one on any of those. See what I mean? We don't speak like Yoda. Edenton, what's happening there this weekend? That's not how we use it. So you need to stand for something so that when people look for you, they will find you by what is your claim to fame, that thing you're known for. And that has changed how we use the internet. Location is always second to the primary draw, that one thing that puts you on the map. For Asheville, it's food. It's food and art. Even their wayfinding signs, on every top of every wayfinding sign is a finial that's a piece of art done by a local artisan. I mean, because that's who they are. It's that funky, cool, free-thinking society that's known as Asheville now. And so every town has to be known for something specific. And that's what a brand is. So I always say you must quit marketing geography first. Okay? I mean, we worked, there are 533 cities and towns in North Carolina. Here's the big question. And for you, you have so steeped in history, but you know what? You're not the only community in North Carolina that's steeped in history. I think yours is well preserved better than probably every town in the state. And so I think you have a good claim to fame already. But beyond your historical, what are you known for? Because what sets you apart from the other 532? When you end up with this intercoastal ferry coming around, and everything, so why should we go to Elizabethtown, or why should we come here, or to Plymouth, or wherever we're going? What is it? What is it that sets you apart? And so I always say the burning question for everybody, for all towns across America, is what do you have that the people we're trying to attract can't get or do closer to home? Number one question. You have two choices. You can be different or clearly better. This is where Edenton really shines. When it comes to historical significance and preservation, you shine. As a matter of fact, you shine better than just about any community I've been in, and I've worked in 2,000 of them. I think what you have here is awesome. I mean, really, really substantially awesome. So what you have is clearly better in that. And I think that is a really great claim to fame. So, and by the way, if you're clearly better, only by third-party endorsement. So when Forbes calls you one of the prettiest towns in America, and when Main Street America, part of the National Trust, calls you one of the best downtowns in America, those are third-party endorsements, and that's great. So you have that. I think what you have is phenomenal. And so, so we have all kinds of videos and put your team together, and are we really good with this? What can we add to our historic destination that's a little more interactive? Is it art? Is it music? Is it food? Is it waterways and boating recreation? What is it? Give me something to add to it. Because people will come here to see your history, and once they've seen the beautiful homes, the beautiful downtown, why would I come back? I've seen it, been there, done that. And that's what you have to work on, is how do we get people to come back time and time again? And so I always think, add to it, find your unique selling proposition. So, I'm not going into this, but we even there's videos in that library that tell you how to do all of this. And I think you're well on your way, but I'd like to see you add something to it. So what sets you apart from everyone else? And by the way, this even applies to businesses. And you can't do this publicly. Remember I said about tourism, downtown, economic development, chambers of commerce, they really need to take the lead. If you wanted to go to the town of Edenton and say, we want to come up with a secondary brand focus besides our history, this is what would happen when you make it a public project. Number one, there's enthusiasm. Oh, that Brooks guy came in here. We're really pumped up. We got to get really cruising here. We're creating the Destination Edenton team. And so you start planning, come up with great ideas. And then there's disillusionment, and some people don't agree with that. And then there's fear and panic and search for the guilty, punishment of the innocents, and finally, praise and honors for the non-participants. Did I get that about right? There you go. 7 phases of public project. People in the public are going, yep. Number 3, develop an action plan. Develop an action plan. I always say every town, and once again we have videos on this, starts with a plan. And you don't need to, breaking down the silos. I mean, we've got all kinds of stuff on that. But I always say every town, branding, what is it we want to be known for besides our history? Because even Asheville, they're known for food. Food is number 1 on their list. And entertainment is number 2 on their list. And so branding, what do we need to do to own it? How do we tell the world? And here's our to-do list. This does not to be no more strategic plans. Strategic plans are gone, done, over yesterday. We want action plans, which is a to-do list, never more than 100 pages. No more executive summaries, because when people read an executive summary, there's no reason to read a 1 page after that. Instead, what you do is say, here's what we want Edenton to look and feel like in 10 years, 7 years. I never go past 10. And you may say, by the way, your population, I think, is about 5,000, right? When I did the trolley tour today, she said 100 years ago, our population was about 5,000. We're very steady. So here's the question. Do you want it to grow past 5,000? Do you like it at 5,000? How much are you doing? Where are you at with tourism? Are you okay being more of a tourism destination? Are there things we want to do with our downtown? What can we add to that? And let's put together a plan. It doesn't need to be expensive. It doesn't need to it needs to be specific. And so I always say, long term, where are we at? Are we engaged on millennials? Are we getting more people? Here's my biggest question for Edenton is, do you have an aging population? Or are the young people coming right back in here and helping you create that cycle? Because if you have school enrollment going down, that means the young people aren't coming back, and registering their kids' school. Those are all things, and I don't know the answer, so I'm not judging you. But from when I looked at some quick demographics, it said that Edenton was kind of an aging town. Asheville had the same problem. People moved there, they loved it, they stayed there, and they never left. And in the case of Asheville, it got expensive where the millennials had a hard time being affordable to come back and live in Asheville. Matter of fact, Asheville in the state of North Carolina, it costs more to live there, and people are willing to make less, which is not a good thing. You don't want to say it costs more and I make less just because I want to live there. But that's where they're at. And so they're trying to figure out where's that balance. And by the way, we always say that when it comes to local handouts, grants and things, so if the town provides money to local organizations, what are you doing that fits our goals, this 5-year, 3-year, 5-year, 7-year plan that we just put together? What are you doing that's going to help us develop that? So rather than just say, here's money for you, money you, and you put them in all these different silos, you put them into things where you got everybody on the same page pulling in the same direction. Make sense? So, once again, it's going to that. Number 4 is I'm going to talk about downtowns, because downtowns are huge. As a matter of fact, all these publications that you're going to see coming up here all looked at what are the things that people want in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. They all got together. They all did their own independent research. Then they started compiling all of the studies, and then they said, here is what people want. So if you want to attract people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, here are the top 10 priorities for them in order. Number 1 was safety, particularly for kids. I think you got that. You live in the kind of town where you can probably tell your youngsters, be back when I grew up, it was like, be home by dinner. But I think that's something you have. I can't say that for every town in North Carolina. And so that's great. Number 2 on that list is good educational system and childcare. I don't know where you're at with that, but that's number 2 is education. And usually education, if you don't have a top-notch educational system, I'm talking about elementary schools, junior high, high schools. If you don't have top-notch, it's usually not the fault of the educators. Sometimes it's the demographic that drives it. And I always say sometimes we have to change the demographic. That doesn't mean kicking anybody out. It's bringing in another level that will help raise the whole bunch. And so that's number 2 on their list of priorities. Number 3 is an engaged community, a sense of belonging. And this is where downtown is number 3 on the list. Number 3. Number 4 is they want cultural depth. This is where Asheville, for one, shines, is that cultural depth. And that's all downtown. And this is like street musicians. You'll go to Asheville 365 days a year and you'll find street musicians. And they love it. Life after 6 o'clock. How you doing on that, Edenton? Couple nights a week. Okay, that's good. That's a good start. But I'll give you a statistic right now, is that 70% of all bricks and mortar retail spending takes place after 6 p.m. 70%. Are you open? And then you wonder why people are going down to Elizabeth, down somewhere else to go do their shopping because Walmart is open till midnight. By the way, that figure came from the National Retail Federation. Who belongs to that? Walgreens, CVS, McDonald's, all those places that are open late. Okay? But if you want millennials, and we want life after 6. And by the way, we're not talking about the bar scene. We're talking about anything to do after 6. We just want life after 6. So after work and on weekends. We want top-notch recreation, you got it. I think you got that in spades. And whether that is local trail systems, I can put your waterways, whether it's local sporting fields, those types of things. Number 7 on their list is healthcare, particularly for kids. And then number 8 is transportation, bike lanes, rideshare, all of these kinds of things, just so we can get around. And then number 9 is affordability and quality. They don't want just cheap, but they want nicer starter homes, move-ups, nice neighborhoods, people that are downsizing, really critical. And what's really interesting is the last thing on this list was jobs. Because if you have the other 9, they will create a job. Do you have any entrepreneurial activities? Can I open up a shop and rent kayaks and canoes out here on the waterfront? See what I mean? Those are entrepreneur. Do you have those? So if you have those other 9, they'll bring the jobs, or the jobs will come with them. So the other thing is, downtown is the litmus test. When site selectors and investors come into a town, they will judge the health of your downtown economically is how they'll judge the health of the community economically. In the case of Plymouth, that's a major challenge if you've been over there, and we were working on that yesterday, creating a redevelopment commission and everything, because their litmus test doesn't pass. Matter of fact, I'm very concerned about the passenger ferry going over to Plymouth before they're ready. Because you don't want people to get off a boat and have a poor experience and then go, this is it, and then they rate down the whole experience. So they have a lot of work to do. I think you've already got this easily. It's your best recruitment tool is downtowns. And they create a sense of place. It is your third place. It is your nucleus. And so first place is the place we live. It's our home. The second place is the place we work. And the third place is the place we go to hang out. That's Asheville. Starbucks built an entire brand out of third places. You've got one. Where's Jennifer? We went there this morning to get coffee. I got hot chocolate and then spilled it in her car. I've been apologizing to her all morning. And so, but the whole thing is, that's where the local, and we walked in there this morning and sure enough, there's the table of the locals, right? And she said, don't say anything because he's going to try to sell you a house. Right? And I won't mention any names, but yeah, you all know, okay. But you know what? That's what we want. These are third places. But that's what all of downtown is about. And by the way, downtowns and tourism reduce the tax burden that local residents have to pay. And so what's really cool is that anything you invest in your downtown is an investment, not an expense. And this is not saying you need to do this. I think you already get it. So here, I'm just letting you know that if you are concentrating a lot of your effort on downtown, it's well-founded and well-deserved. As a matter of fact, my new best friend is the governor of North Dakota, North Dakota has 90,000 six-figure jobs available right now. 6 figures. How many are going, I'm sending my resume. Here was his problem. Would you want to move to North Dakota? See what I mean? And actually, North Dakota isn't as bad as everybody thinks it's the frozen tundra, like Green Bay. But the point is that he made Main Street the #1 of the state's priorities with all of his departments. That's how important it is. So number 5, downtowns are about placemaking. And you might go, what the heck is placemaking anyway? And here's the official, a multifaceted approach to the planning, design, programming, and management of public spaces, capitalize on local blah, 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 and I'm going to get right over it. Planning, design, program, management of public spaces. And what's our focus? What's it feel like? So in Asheville, we created these greens downtown. We created these public plazas where we could put on people doing food demonstrations. We could put buskers, which is street performers. And what's our focus? And then how do we make it look like that? And that's why they put the finials on all the wayfinding signs and made art really prominent. And then how do we program it? And I'm going to tell you more about that. And then who the heck manages it? And then this is all about furnitures, fixtures, and equipment. This is all about public spaces. And so every town should have public gathering areas, wide sidewalks, plazas, year-round public markets. You have a public market. I think it's great. I think it's cute. Maybe down the road it'll start gravitating more towards evening hours so that locals that are working stuff can come enjoy it, because I think it's open, Wednesday? Saturday is great. Most people are off work. And so public wide sidewalks, plazas, and I'm not saying you need to redo all this in your town, but I'm just trying to give you what the trends are. Programming, we always believe that every town needs programming. As a matter of fact, I tell people, move away from organized events and do more just activities. And I'll show you some. Shops, eateries, sidewalk cafes. During the season, do you have sidewalk cafes? People allowed to put tables and chairs out there? A little bit. I mean, your sidewalks aren't ultra wide. You're a historic town. But all of these things are all about creating a third place. Extensive beautification, street trees, planters, I think you got that. Cultural depth. Here, I think you've got the art center, which I think gives you a lot of art. I'd love to see more of it public. We saw one piece of public art that they talked about in the trolley tour and said, we're thinking about doing a second one. My thought was, why aren't there 50?
It just started.
Okay, good. See, so there we go. Yes. But that's right. See, this is validating the fact that you're doing that. And so that's awesome. Downtowns are always about people. And by the way, the future of downtowns is where we go after work on weekends. The future of downtowns is not where we go shopping anymore. As a matter of fact, 50% of all Americans pay the $100 plus every year to become Amazon Prime members. Myself included. And so we don't go downtown to buy jeans, socks, hosiery, although shoe stores are doing quite well in downtowns. We're moving from Macy's. As a matter of fact, department stores are going away. 1/3 of all the malls in the United States will close by the end of 2020. The days of the utilitarian suburban mall are coming to a close. Downtowns are back and more important than ever. But the future of downtowns is not about shopping. It's about where we hang out. So it's dining. It's the cute little shops. We're moving away from Macy's to Etsy. That's the kind of shops people want. And I think you've got a lot of those. They're about people, not cars. This is a huge shift, and the biggest shift in American history is that people, locals and visitors, want a pedestrian-friendly experience. Cities everywhere are narrowing their streets, widening their sidewalks, and many cities everywhere are starting to close off streets. And I'm not suggesting you need to close off Broad or anything, but people want out of their cars. Here's what a fascinating thing is: only 70% of millennials have a driver's license. The average age is 24. When I read that, and now that's not so true in the rural areas. If you don't have a car, you don't survive. But age 24, I have a daughter who's 31. She goes, why would I get a driver's license? But she's forced to live in urban areas because of it. And so 70%. I was shocked because you know what? When I turned 16, that day I was getting my driver's license, right? Changed. We are moving to the European standard. You just see it in politics, the whole idea of socialism things. We're starting to move to the European standard. But I'm not going to talk about that side of politics. I'm going to talk about when all these generations started going to Europe, they started seeing this. They started seeing this. I was working in Belfast, Ireland, which used to be one of the B's you avoided: Baghdad, Belfast, Beirut, right? And now this is one of the youngest cities on earth. Apple's there, Google's there, Facebook's there, everybody's there. And they have closed off most of their downtown streets to traffic, other than delivery vehicles in the morning. And this is happening everywhere. We were involved with 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica, California, which at the time had like drug needles in this street. It was terrible because everybody was at the Santa Monica Pier 3 blocks down on the waterfront. But they revitalized this street, brought in a good business mix, and then they closed it off to pedestrian traffic. And now it's the central gathering place in all of Southern California. And 70,000 people live in Santa Monica. In the New York City, they closed down 60 miles of lanes of traffic in Manhattan. 60 miles. As a matter of fact, they would go down, used to be a taxi lane right here. They said, we're going to just shut it down for a few weeks. We're going to paint it green. We're going to see if it works. Never reopened. They even took 45 of these. This used to be a right turn lane. They created 45 little corner parks. Manhattan went from the most congested city in the United States to number 5. Because people said, they're out of their cars. I'm just going to get on the subway. I'm going to get on a taxi, or I'm going to take the path over from New Jersey. And that's what they do. I mean, this used to be traffic. They even took the Highline Trail. If any of you go there, that used to be a trolley system over the city, is now like, they did that for the locals, and now it's like the #1 tourist attraction. This is Pearl Street Mall in Boulder, Colorado. It was a street very much like yours. About 3 blocks long, about the same width and everything, and now there's no cars there. And they were one of the first to do this. They did this in the early 80s, and it is the place to go hang out in the entire Denver, Colorado area, Boulder. And then, by the way, they have all kinds of musicians and stuff, and they have a little page of rules, same as in Asheville, that says you can't ever ask for money. You can certainly put down a tip jar or a guitar case or anything. And it just works. So everywhere you go, McKinney, Texas, they're widening sidewalks, narrowing the streets, and making it more pedestrian friendly. And every city should encourage outdoor cafe dining in the summer, spring, whenever it's not too humid or too bad weather. But everywhere you go, you will see sidewalk cafes and this move. This is what's happening. So I'm just letting you know, these are trends. This is what's happening across the country. And as a matter of fact, when it comes to downtown, there it is. This is what I told you a little bit ago. But you know what's coming back into downtowns and are really successful? You're going to love it. The butcher, the baker, you got it, and the candlestick maker. Literally, these are doing well in downtowns. And remember, downtown needs to be about locals first, visitors second. Okay? Because if you don't hang out in your own downtown, neither will visitors. They go where you go. Who's moving into downtowns? It's not millennials. Millennials are like every other generation, is that when they start having kids, they want to live in the suburbs where their kids can get on bikes, and they want to have a yard just like every other generation. Who's moving into downtowns are boomers and empty nesters, and they love it. So that's a misperception. By the way, this next slide is coming to Edenton. I'd give it, 2 or 3 more years. It's already happened. Okay, well. Yeah. I couldn't help it, sorry. There's that. Downtowns are about life after 6. I mean, this is the future of downtowns right there. So think about that. Now, when you think about, let's talk about tourism. You're already a popular tourism destination. During the day, we might be in a trolley tour. During the day, we might be visiting your museums that are open during the day. We might be out there on boats. We might be taking the ferry. We might be doing all kinds of other things. We're doing all this recreational stuff during the day. And then we get done at 5 or 6 o'clock, and we have to go back to the Hampton Inn or the B&B we're staying in, twiddle our thumbs and watch TV because you closed. That is something. And by the way, overnight visitors spend the night where there's things to do after 6 o'clock. And overnight visitors spend 3 times more than day visitors. So where's Nancy? Oh, right there. She can't make them all spend the night. But I'd like them to. She would like them to, absolutely. You know, the trick with tourism, I'd rather have you get 1/4 of the visitors and spend 4 times more money. See what I mean? That's the ultimate goal. And not that we're trying to get them to get less visitors, but what you'd rather have is fewer, so it doesn't impact you as local residents. And so this is really critical. So here's the shift. This is one of the biggest shifts ever. Now, in your schools, in your elementary school, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, is enrollment stable, going down, up? Going down. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not coming back, because there's another shift I need to show you. Is boomers generally had their kids in their 20s, and a lot of times in the early 20s. But the Gen X generation and the millennials are having their kids in their late 30s and early 40s. By the way, fathers of these generations spend twice as much time with their kids than us boomers did. That's cool. But so one thing is, it doesn't mean they're necessarily moving away. It just means there's this gap as this next generation are just having kids a little later in life. But it is something to keep your eye on, because if that trend keeps continuing, then that means you're an aging, you're not repopulating, you're not regenerating your population. 72% of the entire US population that are parents, both parents work. In 1970, it was 42%. So convenience rules the day. I mean, Amazon, brilliant. As much as I think we kind of swear at Amazon, but what would we do without them, right? But convenience rules the day. And here's another shift that you need to know about, is in the 50s and 60s, the average time, and even in the early 70s, the average time families ate dinner was 5:30 to 6, and today it is 7 to 7:30 and getting later. Go to Western Europe. They eat dinner at 9:30 at night. We're moving to the European standard. 7 to 7:30. I've seen many restaurants in North Carolina, I don't know about your town, they close at 8. I mean, hello? And think about your visitors. I mean, this is happening. It's real. And here's that other statistic. So if you want tourism, if you want young families back and everything, this is going to be really critical. And then there's my question, are you open? So we actually have a video in there that tells you how to do this. We do shared work. I could do this whole time on just how to stay open after 6. And I get it, when you have mom and pop Etsy style shops, we need to go home, fix dinner for the kids, and I get all of that, but there's ways to get around that to stay open later. Now, there is, in the case of Asheville, and because I have a lot of experience over there, is in the case of Asheville, their shops actually only stay open until 7. They don't stay open until 9 or 10. But that's because Asheville is an entertainment destination. So what they have is they have a shopping and dining period. And that is basically from 11 in the morning till about 7 at night. So it's shopping and dining kind of together. But at about 7 o'clock at night, the retail starts shutting down and it becomes dining and entertainment. So the dining is the one thing that bridges those 2 times a day from shopping to entertainment. And they have loads of entertainment in Asheville, so the shops don't need to be open. We still have people downtown. Does that make sense? So, your downtown is also your community living room. And the number one activity of everybody, locals and visitors, decompressing. We want to decompress. This is why we want to be away from cars and stuff. So, decompressing in a pedestrian-friendly setting. This is the kind of downtown everybody should have, or that you should work towards. So in essence, placemaking is improving the quality of life for your citizens by creating a community living room where you can hang out 300 days a year. So this is what I tell everybody. Your downtown, think of your downtown as a living room. So if you think about inviting people over to your house, don't we wish? Think about your living room. where you might have popcorn and people are coming over to watch movies. Oh, how about movies on a square downtown every Wednesday evening? See what I mean? These are the kinds of things. Wouldn't it be cool? We go in our living room, might have Jenga blocks like this. But did you know they make Jenga blocks that you can buy on Amazon that are 4 feet tall for $79? Wouldn't it be if you had those, just these kind of activities? You know, wouldn't it be great if you have table games? If you go downtown to Asheville, you'll find a whole row of chess sets. And they thought, what are we going to do with all these chess sets in our downtown? People are going to be vandalizing the pieces. And sure enough, pieces were disappearing. You know where they found them? Birds' nests. The birds were taking them. So they called the manufacturer that makes chess pieces and said, look, we keep losing pieces. A pawn is missing or something. And they said, we're going to send you a whole bag full of seconds, you know, where they have a little chip or the paint wasn't quite right. And so they have volunteers that every single day they'll go around, put all the chess sets back, and they'll just see if there's any pieces missing. They grab out of the bag, not a problem. And so all the things you would do in a living room, whether it's birthday parties or whether it's downtown barbecues or wine tasting or whatever it is, all of these things, you know, tailgate parties, you know, you just name it, you know, even doing little bouncy house things, even fire pits in the winter months downtown. All of these things are about placemaking. And by the way, you should have benches almost in front of every single shop, and benches should always be at the facade facing out and flanked with pots. Because downtown should look just like everybody's front porch. And if there's a place, even on the trolley tour they talked about, if you notice all these southern homes, they all have balconies, a lot of them two-tier balconies, and they all have chairs on them. We went by one house that had 2 adult chairs and 2 little chairs. And she pointed it out when I was on the trolley tour. But this is the way retail should be too. And then doing things like musical instruments, all of these things. You know, this is in Edmonton, Alberta. They have a street called White Ave. And that's their whole brand. We're the life of the Edmonton party. That's kind of what Asheville is to North Carolina. You know, celebrating the good things in life. So what I always tell cities, not necessarily you, but other cities, is what kind of activities will get you to go downtown at least once a month or once a week? What do we need to add? And so sometimes it's the little front porch cafe. It's these little local places like this one in the Bungalow Bar in Portland, Oregon. We want places to hang out. Notice they have a fire pit right there in the middle. We've even seen cities go and they'll take up 2 or 3 parking spaces and they'll just do this for like 3 weeks. Just a little, what we call pop-up parks. But since you don't have wide enough sidewalks, they would just use 2 or 3 parking places. I mean, this is in Nelson, British Columbia, which is in the Kootenay Rocky Mountains. Notice how well he's dressed and everything. This was in January. And you notice it's unamplified music. This is Asheville. It's all unamplified. Even doing stuff like this, wouldn't this be the coolest thing ever? It's placemaking. You know, having tables and chairs wherever you could. And as I was going downtown, I kept going, where could we put a plaza? Where could we put a public plaza? Because if you want to go back in history, even in Boston, they have public plazas that came even from England back then. And so doing these kinds of things, it's just a place we go to hang out. And the key to every downtown is programming. This is in Rapid City, South Dakota. This right here that you're seeing was a parking lot. And so what comes first? People downtown on a consistent basis 250 days a year. When people are downtown 250 days a year, you will have no retail vacancies. And you're good this way. But I had this conversation on Plymouth because they have about 10% occupancy in their downtown. And so it's creating a place for people to hang out. For retail to be sustainable, you need customers 250 days a year. For downtowns, bringing people downtown, we'll put customers in front of the stores, and then the retail. And by the way, if you have your activities really take place after working on weekends, the retailers are more likely to be open because you're bringing the customers to their front of their stores those hours. So that's how you can convert people to being open later in the evening for both visitors and locals. So. And you don't want to compete with retailers. So when I see towns do splash pads outside of downtown, when I see people doing little, stages and stuff, but it's outside downtown. When you do those things, you're competing with downtown. And so somewhere I always say you need to bring these activities in the heart of your spending district because that increases your tax base. So people downtown on a consistent basis, if we could get 1%, if we could get 50 people, would that be 1% of 5,000? And by the way, your service area, I'm sure, is bigger than 5,000. Am I right? Probably closer to what? Got any idea? 15,000? You got 15,000 in the county, roughly. I would imagine, and you're the only city or town in the county, right? In the incorporated. So that means your tax base is really 15,000 people. So can we get them to come downtown? And I always say start with Fridays and Saturdays. I mean, you're in North Carolina. I mean, granted, this morning I was scraping ice off my windshield. We don't do that in Phoenix. But by the time I was on the trolley tour at 10:30, I mean, you stand in the sun, it's warm. I mean, even on a day like today where it's cool. And I know that every once in a while you get the rain and you get some other weather in here. But you know what? There's no reason why you can't do this. And I think it's really, really important for both tourism, downtown, local residents, and if you want young people back. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that works in downtowns. I'm going to give you a couple examples. This is in Waterloo, Ontario. And I suggested that they turn this parking lot into a plaza. And Shoppers Drug Mart went crazy. This is a bank. I wish these would have been more restaurants, you know what I mean? So it'd front on there. But I just wanted them to try it for a demonstration. And then when and here's the argument. You take away the parking, you're going to kill my business. That probably never happens here, right? Didn't think so. But you know, if anybody ever comes to you and says, you take away the business, you take away the parking and kill my business, here's what you say. Are you telling me your business isn't worth walking 2 blocks for? Shuts them right up. I'll give you a statistic. Well, maybe I have it even coming up here. The average shopper at Walmart parks 360 feet away from the front door. That's average. 360 feet. Yet they have no problem walking 360 feet to the front of the store and then walk all the way to the back to buy a Blu-ray or a DVD. They just walk 2 blocks. It just has to be worth it. So I said, I want you to get rid of this and let's just try it. This is it now. It never reopened to vehicle traffic. I mean, you see parking over there on the side. It's worth walking half a block for. So they do all kinds of entertainment there. I mean, look at this. They had a concert going on the stage there. I mean, this is where people come and hang out. And even at night, it's a cool place. And during the summer months in the morning, they have yoga instructors come out. I mean, and then in the winter, guess what? It's an ice rink. So, in the case of Rapid City, South Dakota, this is Main Street Square. And here's what I told them there. I said, I want you to take this parking lot. It's 65 spaces. I want you to get rid of it and put a plaza there. You're taking away the public parking. I mean, I was going to be like lynched. You know, and then see that building over there? That's a Sears building. It had pigeons living in it. I said, why don't you just take down the Sears building and do a 2-acre plaza? This is a parking garage. I said, could you build a 3rd story on it? Not to make up that parking, because down here we're going to put in public restrooms. We're going to park a Zamboni. You can guess where I'm going with that. We put visitor information. We use some of this bottom floor of this parking garage. So I get a call from a guy. And he says, Roger, my name is Ray Hillebrand. I own properties downtown. And you know that Sears building? See it over there? He says, we're not tearing that down. I just bought it. But I also gave the city $2 million to build a plaza, like you said, right next to my new building. He gets in his, and here it is before, after. That's a Sunday morning at 10 a.m. And there's the Sears building on the right. Notice there is 3 stories on the parking garage because the first floor has all kinds of stuff in it. In his building, he has 6 restaurants and he gets 3 times the monthly rental rate than the other places in downtown. Smart investor. But they created this place and all of a sudden car clubs started coming, motorcycle clubs, quilt guilds, potter guilds. Everybody wanted to host their events in Rapid City and they organized the events and would bring them in. They do beer gardens. You can see there's a beer garden going on there and there's that Sears building. Here's the part of the roof of the stage. I mean, it just totally revitalized their downtown. And this is it. In the summer months, this splash pad runs 120 days a year. And you could shut it off. It's all flush mounted. So if you have other shows going on, you shut it off. So that's 120 days a year. There it is in the summer months. And by the way, this over here, where is it? There you are. Right there is called the Alex Johnson Hotel. When they started Main Street Square, that hotel, the top 4 floors were vacant. It is now totally revitalized. The average overnight stay is nearly $500 a night, and it runs at 94% occupancy. Downtown hotels, by the way, are back. You have one, and I hope someday it actually gets done. So, because people, by the way, downtown hotels will outperform highway hotels 4-to-1. 4 times 1. I mean, heck, I'm staying at the Hampton Inn. And it's a nice Hampton Inn, by the way, and I'm a Hilton Honors and all that because I travel 250 days a year. But as a matter of fact, your Hampton Inn exceeds most of the other Hamptons I've been in. So somebody said the general manager is here? Oh, there you are. Hi. Nice to meet you. And your staff does a really good job, by the way. They're really proud of Edenton. So I say, I walk up front desk, yes, I just go, is there anything to do around here? I'm trying to evoke it's small. She goes, oh my gosh, have you been downtown? This town? I mean, she just went, I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So good job. What's that? She gets a raise. Yeah. And so anyway, but the point is, people would love to stay in downtown where I could walk right out and you have a variety of restaurants and activities, particularly after 6. Okay, so this is it during the summer. This is it during the winter. So think about this. 120 days of splash pad, 120 days ice is 240 of your 250 days activity a year. They do movies on the square every Wednesday night. They do other things. As a matter of fact, Main Street Square in Rapid City, there's that Sears building, there's that hotel up there. They make $140,000 a year just renting ice skates and have to dole them out because it gets too busy. And that's a little bigger than Rockefeller Center. It's about 8,000 square feet. You could do synthetic ice. We did. You did? One time.
It was really cool, but it was really expensive.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times you can get synthetic ice where people will come in. When I was speaking in North Carolina, Main Street in Salisbury, I met a guy that actually rents. They actually put them up and everything, and they get most of the money. You get a little bit. But there are some other options for that. Then every night at like 9 o'clock, this comes into more higher pressure. So they try not to get kids too much walking around in there, but they'll do music with it. And this is it. Here it is. Movie night, Main Street Square, Rapid City. The average attendance for, I think it's Monday night movies on the square, average attendance is 3,000. Look what somebody wrote. I grew up in Rapid City. It was never as cool as it is now. Within 2 years of them building Main Street Square, the average age of a person buying a home dropped 12 years. Valparaiso, Indiana. I mean, this is happening everywhere. This is Indian Creek Plaza in Caldwell, Idaho. It has an amazing ice ribbon. I mean, everywhere you go, these things are popping up. This right here is under construction right now in downtown Topeka, Kansas. They tore out 4 buildings to build that, and it's going to be done here in the next 2 months. I mean, here is Michigan City, Indiana's doing this. Everywhere we go. In the case of Michigan City, they went and bought these buildings in their downtown. They tore them down, and they're going to close off that side street. We've even seen towns, Charleston, South Carolina did actually close, where they have their public market, if you've been there, it goes right down the middle of a street, and it's long and narrow. But so if you don't, I'm not saying you need to tear down buildings, but sometimes you say, well, maybe we need to close off a side street for 1 block and make it a pedestrian-oriented gathering place. So I'm just throwing out wild ideas. But these are all things that cities are doing everywhere across America to create these kind of gathering places. Let me go back to that. So that's how cool it can be. Finally, number 10, and Nancy's the one who brought me here. She's going, are you ever going to talk about tourism? Right? No, she's good. And so downtown is tourism's best friend. Tourism is front door to your non-tourism economic development. Anybody who's going to invest here in the county, You know, you've got tire company, peanuts, you've got all kinds of things being manufactured here, but if you want employees and everything, I mean, great, you have a fantastic quality of life. But all these people, they come into your downtown first. And all these people are looking at you. They're all visitors. So when we talk about tourism, we're not talking about just leisure visitors. All these visitors are coming here to check out Chowan County, and what are they thinking? What's their impression? And that's where so I say tourism is the front door to your non-tourism economic development. And a lot of people ride tourism as the ugly stepchild of economic development. Not true. Anybody who has a small business in this town is trying to make a family wage living off of it. Your locals should get you to break even, and tourism can be your profit. So don't ever say, oh, it's just a bunch of housekeeping jobs. It's not fair to tourism, what it does. Plus, people come, they spend money and go home. We love that. And I think you attract the right kind of tourism, so they don't need to be policed. You don't need social services for them. They come, they spend money, they have a good time, they leave. And hopefully they tell their friends that they had a good time, and then they come. And by the way, it might be your history that brings them here, but the number one activity of visitors in the world, not the reason they come, the number one activity once they arrive is shopping, dining, and entertainment in a pedestrian-friendly, intimate setting. Number one activity. And here's the clincher. That accounts for 80% of your non-lodging spending. Are you getting that 80%? You know, I used to teach for Disney Institute. Why do you think there's downtown Disney outside every single one of its parks? To get that 80%. By the way, you sign a lease agreement there, it says you're going to be open until 10 o'clock at night every night. So, if you don't hang out in your downtown, neither will visitors. They go where you go. Here's the other statistic. So there it is, 70% of spending happens after 6. I call this the 787 rule. Here's the next one. Women account for 80% of all consumer spending. Yeah. I'm waiting for the guys. There, yeah, okay. Tell me something I didn't know. Usually there's somebody, and usually a guy in the audience says, that's all. But it is an absolute fact. Women also account for 70% of the decisions of where we live and where we're going to establish a business. Now the guys are saying, yeah, I already knew all that. But it's absolutely true. And women, number one priority, and by the way, that's not a shift. But this is Wickford, Rhode Island. What do you see? Exactly right. That was not staged. That was not staged. So I have just 2 words for you. Think benches. Now that's my wife there going, okay, I'll tell she wasn't very happy about that. But the priorities for women are I want to feel safe, I want it well lit, I want it full of life, and I want people. If you do that, you got it. Men will always follow. True. Next shift. There is nothing you can invest in besides schools that would create a faster rate of return investment than your downtown and having tourism be part of that. What's really interesting is your downtown is actually something that gives back financially. But one thing I wanted to mention is that we did a 7-year study. We surveyed 2,000 downtowns and downtown districts, and we did it with USA Today, Forbes, and who else did we do it? Newsweek or one of those magazines, where we went in to figure out, so we surveyed 2,000 downtowns and downtown districts in the US and Canada. Livability.com was part of that. And we went and found 400 of the more successful downtowns in the United States and Canada, big and small. Some of them were as small as 1,000 people, some of them were districts in bigger metropolitan areas. And we found 400 of the most successful, and Edenton, North Carolina was one of those 400. Because we're pretty selective. And I hadn't even been to Edenton. We just did it through research, looking at tax records, looking at at sales tax, looking at tourism, looking at a whole combination. We had this whole thing. But out of that, we did the 20 most common ingredients that led to their success. And no town had all 20. But most of these 400 towns had probably 14 of the 20. And which to me would be a B grade or an A grade, versus, but nobody has all 20. So the point is, work is never done. Am I right, Jennifer? It's never done. Right, Nancy? And so, there's always room. But that's how important this is to everything that you do. And then in closing, because I'll leave this for lots of question and answer, I love, I came from the tourism industry, and now 85% of what we do is downtowns. And I love tourism, but without downtowns, tourism can't succeed. And that was my message to Plymouth. They have bear watching, that Black Bear Festival they started in 2015. They have one guy over that pretty much is putting Plymouth on the map by himself, Tom. But the thing is they have great recreational assets, but they don't have any of the supporting amenities that will get people to really, they don't have what you saw there. They don't have the downtown. They don't have all of that. And so they're kind of at this beginning stage. You've got it. I just don't want you to lose it, because things are changing and you got to change with the times. It doesn't mean you need to lose your history or your ambience or any of those things. But one of my favorite things is when I go in downtown, sometimes I see the best signs ever. I want to share a few of them with you. If you had to choose between drinking wine every day or being skinny, which would you choose, red or white? My wife said, red, just like that. Alcohol may not solve your problems, but neither will water or milk. This one hit kind of home for me. It was like, don't forget to buy a bottle for Mom Mother's Day. Remember, you're the reason she drinks. I love it. Or how about this one? Carrots may be good for your eyes, but booze will double your vision. And then this one right here, I'll let you read that one. That's a word of wisdom. I love it. I saw this one outside a cupcake shop. And this one kind of like, ouch. It is really good. I thought that was great. And then this one outside of a little cafe I saw. I was working in a town of Okotoks, Alberta, and I saw this on a retail store. It said, push, if that doesn't work, pull, if that doesn't work, we must be closed. And then finally, I've seen this on a few restrooms now, men to the right, men to the left, because women are always right. So shift happens. Without change, communities die. To win, you need to enter the world of placemaking. And I think what you have here is phenomenal. I even thought, do I do this presentation when they really have almost all the ingredients here? I think for you, if you could create more gathering places downtown for your locals to hang out, I'm not sure where or how you do that, but they need to be where people spend money, not out at the waterfront. They need to be right in the heart of the spending district, so it entices people to stay open later. And by the way, when people visit, they want to get in touch with you. They want to feel your ambience, not just look at buildings that are 300 years old. And so that's really critical. And the heart and soul of any community besides its people is its downtown. And so here's the extraordinary future for you. And that is what I've got for you. Whew. So, now I'm willing to answer any questions, and I don't mind the hard questions. You should have seen it yesterday in Plymouth. We had lots of hard questions, and it was really good. But does anybody have any questions? Comments? Thoughts? Yes.
I just have an observation.
Sure.
I've lived here only